Hit the restart button. We're right there to recharge those batteries. We're here to help you. Restart, recharge. Restart, recharge.
Hi, everybody. I'm Katie Ritter.
And I'm Justin Thomas, and this is the Restart Recharge podcast, a podcast by coaches for coaches. We bring you your tips and tricks to help you in your everyday work as an instructional technology coach, or, whatever they call you in your school district.
So hopefully you're going to leave this podcast today feeling a little less on your own coaching island.
Well, look, we want to talk a little bit today. It's May the 4th, so May the 4th be with you first and foremost. But what we want to talk about today is kind of looking at how we start to kind of wrap up this school year and what we've learned and kind of how we can take some of those great things and move it into the next school year. So hopefully our goal for today will be reflecting on what has worked this past school year, which has been, by now, a heck of a school year just with COVID and everything like that. So reflecting on that past school year, what did we learn that was positive and how can we move those positives into building a successful transition to a more normal school year as we move forward? So that's what we're looking at doing for today. Obviously, we got two amazing coaches that are here with us today. We have Tyler Erwin, and I'll introduce him real quick. Tyler is an assistant director of the curriculum and technology integration at Forward Edge. So he is the assistant director here on our team. He has 6 years of classroom teaching experience, including 4 years as a 7th grade language arts teacher as a local middle school. And currently he is serving as a Google certified trainer and mentor coach. He has 4 years of experience as an instructional coach for multiple school districts here in the Cincinnati area. And he works with the entire Forward Edge team to ensure high quality technology integration across our partner districts. He's also a huge Star Wars fan as well. So let's introduce Darth Tyler Erwin.
What's going on, everybody? That was quite the laundry list. I don't feel like I really live up to that description that you just read off, but you know what? I'll take it, especially the Star Wars fan part. So thanks, Justin.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I don't know what a Darth is, but I can speak to the fact that Tyler is my personal lifesaver. So glad to have Tyler here with us.
That might be the reverse.
So yeah, see, I don't know. I'm not the huge Star Wars fan. But I would like to introduce Molly Lutz to our crew today. Molly has taught 8th grade ELA for several years and enjoyed supporting her peers in administration with Google and EdTech tools while she was teaching. And as much as she loved working with students, she realized that her passion was supporting colleagues in the integration of technology into their lessons. She went back to school and earned her master's in human resource development, which had a focus on training and curriculum development for adults. And she enjoys creating engaging content that increases the adoption of strategies, tools, and resources in the classroom. Molly is a Google Level 1 and 2 certified educator, and she currently works as a technology coach for 2 school districts in Ohio. And we are very glad to have Molly with us today. So welcome, Molly.
Thank you. I am not a Star Wars person, but I do know May the 4th be with you. So that's what I offer.
You got that. So guys, as we just kind of get started to jump in with this episode that's really all about reflection on the past year and kind of putting some of that reflection in place looking forward. Before we dive in, will you both kind of provide us just a little bit in general, just sort of experience on your role as a coach and what that's looked like?
Yeah, so I would say for me, I guess I would be considered one of the more veteran coaches in our department. I don't have a ton of experience. Some of these educators, they've been doing it now for 15, 20, 25 years. And so I'm more of a young buck when it comes to that. At least I would like to think so. I've only been obviously teaching in classrooms for 6 years as an educator, but doing the instructional coaching piece for about 4 years. So it's ranged from working for, local suburban districts here in the Cincinnati area, doing some more inner city districts as well. But all things ranging from formal coaching cycles with our teachers to Google certified level 1 educator series to get them prepped for that. Of course, even to the things like informal pop-ins and working with administrators, really just kind of running the gamut, whatever we can do to help our partner districts out. I've certainly had a hand in doing my small part to make sure that they're ready and set to go with all the technology they have. So it's a great job. I love it. Obviously lets me tap into my passion for technology, but also still get a little bit of that educator out in me that allows me to work with people and teach people as well. So I really do enjoy it.
Yeah, and I am kind of on the opposite spectrum. I'm one of the newest members of the team. I've been a tech coach for about a year now. I'm coming up on my year anniversary. However, I would pretty much say when I was teaching, I was also the tech coach. So I was always that tech girl, like, oh, here's Molly, she'll help with whatever it was. It could have been a break fix type thing, which I'm not the best at, but I could fumble my way through it. Or it was helping with the integration of different tools and resources. And so that's basically carried over into this role, is that, yeah, I do get asked the break fix. I'm sure we all do every once in a while, but I get to have a part in that student learning still. It's not me planning all the lessons and doing all that behind the scenes work, but I am working with those teachers to figure out, okay, what's the goal and how are you going to get there? So everything from new tools that they've heard about or that maybe an administrator has suggested to use in the classroom, or maybe students are bringing things to them and they're trying to flip it and be better so that they can really help their students grow. So it's like Tyler said, it's the best job. I get to live kind of both worlds. I don't have to grade the papers anymore, which is awesome. But I'm still directly seeing that student learning and that student growth, which is why we're all in education.
Awesome. I'm glad both of you were able to provide a little background. And this was done unintentionally, I think, Katie, wasn't it? Where we had, one of the senior veterans and one of the rookies out here, but both providing some really good information in the background. They're going to provide really good information here on our podcast today. But let's talk about it. Obviously, Tyler, you had been around the block a couple times, but Molly, this was going to be your first year as coaching, and we knew that this was going to be.
Welcome to the block, Molly. Welcome to the block.
Welcome to the block, Molly. It was a nice, good start to our to your coaching career with what this year was going to bring. We knew it was going to be a little bit of a different year, but what did you anticipate with it, and what was the reality? So, kind of thinking around, like, how was your skill set as a coach being stretched this year, and then what were you carrying over from, or what do you see carrying over from what you have done this year into next year? And Tyler, we're going to talk a little bit. Obviously, you've been around the block, as we mentioned before, but you visit all of our coaches at all of their sites. What are some of the things that you've seen collectively across all the districts that we serve?
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of start first. Just I expected panic, just in the district I serve, having to deal with, well, really everybody, right? This is an unprecedented situation. We've obviously talked about that ad nauseum, but it really is one of the things where, teachers, they're just trying to do their best under the circumstances. And so it's really trying to find, like, okay, despite all of this, like, let's control what I can control. Let's try to reduce the panic and the stress as much as we can. And honestly, just kind of go day to day. And that's really where even your most veteran teachers were at the beginning of the school year. And so it kind of leveled the playing field a little bit. You expect fresh out of college, brand new teachers, they're going day to day, week to week at best. But now everybody was like that. Everybody was like, how do I take this lesson tomorrow and make it accessible to kids who are doing hybrid or remote? And how do I keep these kids engaged when they're not going to be in my classroom with me? And so I feel like that was the biggest thing, was just that sense of panic of, like, everything felt new again. And no matter how experienced you were, you kind of had to go back to the drawing board a little bit and get creative and, re-energize yourself for what was going to be, in some cases, a pretty long and stressful year. And I definitely have seen that not only in the district I work with, but also in all the districts that we serve here in the Cincinnati area, because this is new for everyone. So of course, we're going to have to go back to the drawing board a little bit. We're all going to feel like rookies or like fresh out of college students again, because, well, who knew that we were going to have a year like this? So that's really the biggest thing I've seen, is how it leveled the playing field and made kind of everyone go back to their roots and think kind of on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, like, how am I going to make this lesson work? Even if I've done this lesson 20 times in the past, now I have this new set of circumstances and I still have to make it work. And in some cases, even make it better. So, that's the biggest thing I've seen for sure.
Yeah. So being a new coach, I was coming into some schools that already had coaches before me, right? And so I was filling big shoes, and I anticipated like, all right, I'm going to hit the ground running because they already laid the groundwork for me, and I'm just going to keep going and keep their momentum. And so we had some PD days over the summer and the beginning of the school year. And then there were a lot of closed doors, like literally shut doors. It wasn't like I just couldn't open the door, the theoretical door, right? They were literally locked, lights off, like, please don't come into my room. I have stuff to do. I have to figure out what I'm doing tomorrow because today's plan went to, it just didn't work out, right? And so I anticipated this, not a super smooth transition necessarily, but I anticipated to be able to ride on some of that momentum that was built the year before. And it just kind of slapped me in the face, like, nope, we're gonna keep to ourselves. We're struggling to stay afloat right now. I was hoping that maybe I'd have some opportunities to meet people, engage, doing virtual or in-person PD. Nope, all of our PD for the entire year was canceled, basically in like October. So we haven't had any formal or informal PD sessions. So what I expected definitely didn't happen, but through all of that, I have realized that my coaching goes a lot deeper than just those one-on-one interactions or those large group interactions. I am in the coaching profession because I like building those relationships. I like meeting people and I like supporting people, right? I think all of us are probably in this role for that same reason. So I have found more creative ways to do that, more creative ways to get in front of people, even though it's not face to face, just trying to tweak how I'm building those relationships. So I think it's made me a better coach having the doors physically shut, because I am coming up with better ideas and more inventive ways to really meet people and build those relationships. But it definitely was a challenge at first. I would beg that everybody, I'm sure everybody was facing the same things I was.
And you said something too, Molly, that made me think like you felt like you were slapped in the face. And so like, I think everybody felt that way a little bit, because as coaches, it's like, oh, you're going to innovate. Like, what's the new thing you're doing for the year? Like, what's the hook? What's the new program you're going to do, or training or PD series, or like, what's your theme for the year, whatever. And it really came back to, even for us, like I mentioned with teachers, they kind of had to go back to their roots. For coaches, we did too. It was like, no, it's not going to be a lot of new stuff this year. Like, okay, maybe you got to get them on and dialed in with Zoom or Google Meet or those sorts of things. You got to make sure everybody's good with that. But now let's figure out what your teachers were already pretty proficient with. And let's use that and like, let's kind of pivot and make them even better in this remote hybrid world. And so it was less of like, hey, we're planning new, innovative, super cool stuff. And it's more so like, we're just trying to make sure that the things they're already comfortable with, like they're using as effectively as possible, because like, there's no need to overwhelm. There's no need to like keep piling it on with all the other things that were being put on their shoulders as teachers and administrators too. So I felt like that was a change up for me. Like instantly that stretched me 100%. Like, no, let's think about on a deeper level, how you can integrate the things that they're already comfortable with. And it's not just going to be like new, innovate. You yourself as a coach have to make sure you've done a good job with some of the other things they're already using.
Yeah, I like that. And I feel like when you guys said get slapped in the face and what's your theme for the year, I pictured like one of those boxes or like a Jack in the Box, and you wind it and like the big old like thing comes out and just punches you in the face. That's what the theme of this year felt like, I think. So Molly, it sounds like you kind of touched on it like from your perspective. So feel free to build on this next question that I'm going to pose to you guys. If you have anything to add to sort of that closed door theme that you were going with there. But, Justin and I don't want to like stay in the COVID world necessarily, but any good reflection, you have to kind of have an honest discussion of where you're at, right? So unfortunately for this year, that does involve this COVID year. So just being totally honest and kind of pretty vulnerable here. What would you say was the most difficult aspect of your role this year or of being a coach this year? And if it was your boss, I give everyone a free pass.
It definitely was not my boss.
I think it was the assistant director, right? The assistant director.
Yeah, for sure. That was my job this year. Like, how can I make things harder on them? Just coming up with way after way to just, throw them curveball after curveball. That's what I'm all about, Justin.
No, I would say like the biggest challenge for me I don't know. I touched on that. This is a relationship focused job, right? And I am a person who loves to smile with my mouth and my eyes, and I like people to be able to feel what I'm putting down, right? So I'm not just in it to be like, okay, here are the steps, now move on. I am really in it to be that support, and whether that's talking about your kid's baseball game or like just tech only. Like I want to be all of that for people, and I wasn't able to do that in the way that I had hoped, just because of very real concerns about time, social distancing, like just all of their concerns were valid, but it's challenging for me to not know all of the people I'm working with, which sounds weird. Like you can't know everything about everyone, and I get that, but I like to be able to say more than, okay, here's the little video that I made for you. If you have questions, come ask me. I'm more of a go out and talk to the people type person. So that was really hard for me to adjust and figure out, okay, this is how they need it right now. I'll eventually get to those relationships and get to those deeper connections with people, to build that trust and that relationship where they know that they can come to me for help with a variety of things. We'll get there, but it was really hard for me to accept, like, nope, this is kind of where I have to stop, and I have to hand it over to them and just hope that they'll reach out if they need me. So that was really hard for me.
Yeah, I think, after kind of listening to you for a little bit, Molly, I think the biggest thing for me and probably a lot of the coaches on our team and maybe a lot of our listeners too was just feeling like you're not doing enough, right? This idea as a coach of like, okay, our PD days were canceled. Okay, we can't do our lunch and learn program in person anymore. Okay, they're really suggesting that I don't do informal pop-ins very often, because if you're around someone for more than 15 minutes and you come down with right? So there's all these little things that we used to do that were just in our back pocket. And now it's like the rug is just kind of pulled out from underneath you. And you're thinking to yourself, well, how do I make myself as available as I used to? How do I promote some of the great things I have going on, on our shared Schoology page or our shared Google Classroom page? Or I don't want to abuse the all staff email, but I don't think they'll see it if I send it out. There's just so many like second guessing yourself of like, am I doing enough? Or even, wait, am I using this method too often now? Like, what's the right balance to strike? And I think that a lot of our coaches were really kind of like dealing with that the whole year, is just feeling like inadequate. I'm not able to see people, like you mentioned, Molly, as often in person. I'm not able to do PD days like I once was used to be able to do. Coaching cycles might have had to have gotten shut down for a semester, whatever it was. And so we're kind of left after all of this fallout, and we're thinking, well, where do we fit into all this? Right. And so I think that was a challenge for a lot of us, was to kind of like just innovate on the spot and say, okay, here are my restrictions. Here's what I can and can't do. Like, let's make the most of what I can do. And so I think that was hard for me too, especially when I go and visit all of our different sites at the school I work at, just feeling like you're just doing, the people recognize that like you're still there and you want to help and you want to, promote all the great things you've got going, but just still feeling like it might not be enough.
It is difficult to go through those situations because you do feel like you're doing a lot, but you feel like there's more that you can be doing, especially those interactions. Like, there might be some time that you're working on something kind of behind the scenes that's helping the teachers, but because you don't have the interaction with them and you're not talking with them and things, you just feel like there's something kind of missing there. Especially when, like you said, Molly, it really is a position that's about making connections and working with teachers and things like that. So it is kind of interesting to see how you've kind of, had to kind of shift gears a little bit here and there, but both of you are still doing a really great job. I'm just going to put that out there. So you guys are both doing an awesome job, but I want to talk a little bit about transitioning the teachers back in a way if we're going to close out this year and open up the next chapter for the next school year. Obviously, there's going to be some things that have been done really well this school year that you've been innovative in a different way. How do you transition teachers to getting back to like that spot where we're going to, transition them to being able to use these tools, but maybe in a little bit more in-person way, hopefully, right? For some of the schools that have been a little bit more hybrid or virtual. So kind of just overall reflection, where do you take what you've done this year and continue to build onto it for next year?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question just because you want to continue to build upon the momentum, even if you felt like the momentum stalled at some point this year. But I will tell you, like, now that schools have had their spring break, spring is in the air, summer break is around the corner, I really do see that teachers and administrators and even students, they're looking forward. Like this year, I think they're all going to kind of like, tuck it away as a memory, but maybe not pull out that memory very often.
So true.
Right. It's just like,
it's like that one bad night you had in college. You don't want to think about it again.
Yeah. Right. It happened, but you just don't want to think about it again. Right. And I think that for us, we have to follow in line, right? Yes, we might have had to innovate and do different things this year, but how can we capitalize on like the attitude that everyone has now, like looking forward to next year? So I think some of the things that I want to do are really just have honest conversations with teachers and say, in the moment, you did all of these new things. You maybe tried out flipped lessons, or you really started to build like a big resource library in your learning management system, or some of those things, right? You may have never done that had it not been for COVID. Like, what do you feel like has a lasting purpose moving forward? And I've heard so many teachers say, why haven't I done flipped lessons before? Like, it's so great for students that are absent. It's so great for reteaching and remediation for those kids who need a second hack at learning a concept or a skill. And I think it's like little things like that, right? Flip lessons is one example of many, but just having those honest conversations with them and saying, okay, you were maybe kind of forced in the moment to do some of these things, but after doing it for a year, like what really sticks? And then after hearing that, that's what I want to build on, thinking of ways that they can continue to, yes, maybe go back to a sense of normalcy, maybe not doing the video conferencing and all the different jumping around they had to do with hybrid and remote. But like, what was the good teaching that came out of COVID that maybe you would have never tried before without this experience? And so building on that after their honest reflection. And I think too, it's funny, but even just kind of like resetting, like the beginning of this school year, it was all like rushing to figure out like what it was going to look like, what it was going to be like. And so some of the like common things that we did were kind of thrown out. And so I'm thinking next year too, just kind of going back to the basics. Like, guys, let's take a look at things like your Google Drive and get it organized. There was no time for that when the year of COVID. Or let's think about how you're organizing the folders on your LMS. Like, let's really give some thought to how you're building your course out for your kids. Things that there was absolutely zero time for. I really want to go back to some of those things and give those attention as well, so that we continue to just build on those good habits that hopefully as a coach, I was trying to impress upon them before this year began. So those would be some of the things that I have in mind, but I just think like everybody's looking forward, and we as coaches, we've got to ride off into the sunset with that attitude as well.
Tyler, I love that. I feel like maybe like tech coaches have kind of been like living in the future a little bit. Like we've seen this, we've understood this, we've been trying to preach it, and maybe people just weren't like ready to hear what we were trying to share just yet. And now that they've actually lived it and experienced a lot of these things for yourself, like you referenced the flipped lessons, right? Like, and now people actually had to do it, and because they were immersed in it, they now understand the benefits. So they're ready to continue. So I feel like all of those little statements make the little tech coach hearts everywhere super happy to hear. And Molly, before we jump into your response on this, I'm sorry, but Tyler, I wanted to dig into a little bit something you said at the very beginning of your response. And that was like going back to all of these teachers and having these honest conversations and sharing with them sort of the bright spots from their past year of things that they've done and included in ways that they've pushed themselves. So in terms of like practicality of that, how are you just going by memory on what they've done, or do you have tips for other coaches on how they might like stop and reflect so that they can have really good conversations with teachers in that way?
Yeah. So what I've done just to make it a little bit more like systematic and organized for me is I've organized, depending on the school, but let's just use like the high school I work at, for example. I've organized meetings with each department. And so I'm going to be going actually meeting with them after school. Really, we've kind of have like a little schedule laid out until the end of the school year hits, and just kind of talking with them, like no form you have to fill out, nothing like that. I may take some notes and I may record some things after we meet, but it's really just to hear like from their perspective. Like, guys, what do you think went well this year? What tools were just so invaluable that without them, maybe this year would have been a disaster? And then what training do you still feel like you need, or what still is missing? Because I think that getting those insights on like what went really well and what tools were really useful, as well as the gaps that they still feel like are there, that's going to be key in me transitioning them back more effectively next year. And so I really just want to have like a conversation with all of them. And I think it works well at the high school to do that within department, just because of the very unique things that they're teaching at that level. And the way in which they may use technology is very different, department from department too. So, however you organize that, whether that's meeting with them as a department, whether that's sending out some sort of survey, I think that just hearing it from them is really important, because I can walk into classrooms and observe and I can take notes, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm getting an accurate idea of like what their perception is or what their reality was when they were using this tool or this lesson or this strategy. And so I really want to hear it from them and then use that to kind of use it as a springboard in the future to build on.
Awesome. Thanks. Sorry, Molly, what about you? What are you looking to transition back?
Yeah, so Tyler mentioned at the beginning that this was a weird year and a lot of people had to get back to the basics and they had to figure like things out in a very quick time. So I honestly think this is going to be one of the easier years that they're going to transition. They're going to be like, phew, nothing can top this. So it's like, I think people are super excited to get into, yes, it's still unknown. We're still in an unknown territory of sorts, but it can't be worse than last year, right? So I think the excitement is going to help with that transition, that they're not going to be as hesitant to jump into things because they've had to, like, right? This is now a choice where they can pick and choose kind of what they're going to put their feet in and kind of immerse themselves in. Whereas this past year, it's been like, okay, it's out of necessity. We have to do it. So like Tyler was saying, I really plan on trying to figure out, okay, what was working, what tools did the majority of our teachers use? Maybe if we had paid subscriptions of things, are we continuing those things? Because what I hope to accomplish is showing people, okay, these are the tools that you were using every day or really frequently with your students. Here's what the benefit was of using those, and here's how you can incorporate those into our normal, traditional, whatever it's going to look like in the fall. I want to show them that, yeah, you did all this stuff because you kind of had to, but now you get to choose what you want to do, and it's still going to be beneficial for you and your students. So using that as an opportunity to say, yeah, you don't have to keep all of it, right? But here's how these things can fit into your traditional normal classroom, and show them that if you liked it, if it's not broke, why fix it, right? So giving them the tools and the strategies to say, okay, here's your plate, here's your platter of resources, strategies, tools, tips. Take your little dabble from whatever part of the platter you want, and let's take it to the next level. So my hope is that they're not feeling, oh gosh, here's Molly and she has new stuff for me again because it's the start of a new school year. I want to say, nope, we've already been using this stuff. How do we take it to the next level? Last year, you didn't have a chance to really dig in and get the full benefit of this tool or resource. Let's take it to the next level, and it's going to make your life more efficient, easier, and probably more enjoyable because you're going to get better results from your students. So that's kind of my approach for this transition, is laying out what they've already been doing and helping them get to that next step.
Yeah. And you said something, Molly, that I think is super key. Like, this past year was all about form factor. The question was like, well, can I put that on my LMS? Can I share that on a Zoom? Is it digital? Will this work for the kids at home? It was all about form factor. It wasn't about benefit. And so like, what I want to show them is like, guys, yeah, the form factor was there last year. It worked in a digital, hybrid, remote, whatever, but the benefits stay regardless of how you share it. Right. So I think that it's kind of moving away from those questions of like, will it do this? Will it work with this? Can I share it here? And more of like, no, let's take a look at the student benefits, because ultimately, like, that's what we want to do as coaches anyway. So big proponent of like benefit over form factor. And this year it was totally reversed for sure.
Awesome. Well, guys, I'm going to, my next question for you is going to be completely unrelated to COVID, but just thinking about your end of year tips in general for coaching, and really the rest of the episode, we're going to kind of move away from anything related to COVID necessarily, and just kind of talk about general end of year reflection and moving forward. And before I have you guys answer, we're going to take a quick 30-second break from our sponsor. So stick around for 30 more seconds, listeners, and we'll be right back with you with their answer for end of year coaching tips.
Looking for a program that reaches all teachers in learning new tools to integrate in their lessons? Edu Badges is the answer. Edu is an anytime, anywhere badging program that is designed to take bite-sized tools for instruction and teach teachers how to use them. Edu has received the ISTE Seal of Alignment for educator standards, and each badge in our expanding library is aligned to the ISTE standards and the SAMR model. Learn more about the program that teachers call addicting at forward-edge.net/Edu Badges.
All right, welcome back. Thanks for sticking with us. We have Tyler, Erwin, and Molly Lutz here with us talking about reflecting on this year and just the year in general as a coach, and looking at moving forward for the next year. So right before our break, I asked you guys for your general tips for coaches for the end of the year. So if you could share what those tips are, that'd be great.
Yeah. So I have recently been setting up meetings with my admin, because planning for next year starts now, right? So my end of year strategy basically as a coach is to figure out what next year's big initiatives are. Yes, I'm wrapping up things, loose ends, and trying to make sure that we end on a strong note. But my end of year is really trying to figure out, I think Tyler said, the gaps. What were the gaps for this school year? How are we going to make sure that we address those if it's an initiative that we are focused on for the next school year? So I'm setting up those meetings right now. I'm making sure that I'm keeping good notes. So we were just talking about like, how are we going to make sure that we're focusing on the right things next year and how that transition works. So I'm making sure that any of these long-term projects or goals that I started with teachers are either getting close to wrapping up, or we're figuring out, okay, we're going to kind of veer this and focus on this for August, because this is something that's it's a really good goal. It's a long-term thing. So just making sure that I have those good notes. would be my tip for coaches, is to help yourself start off strong. You need to have that background knowledge, and over the summer, lots of stuff happens, right? So it's going to help me a lot, I think, having those, okay, here's kind of where we ended, here's where they want to start, so that come August, I can approach those teachers and educators like, hey, last time we talked, this is what we talked about. And a lot of times they're shocked that you remember, and it's like, that's my job. I'm a coach, right? So those are two of my biggest tips, would be to set up those admin meetings and have your notes in order so that you can start that year strong, and making sure that those relationships and people are trusting you to be the support that they need.
Yeah, I think those are great. You know, for me, I think one of the biggest ones is I just want to make myself available, like, to everyone, because naturally, right, as coaches, you know, those folks listening in, the team members that we have here at Forward Edge, we have our favorites. We have our teachers that we visit more often or that we work with more often. But what can happen is, like, when the end of the school year comes, we can kind of fall into those same patterns. And then teachers who maybe we haven't visited as often this particular school year, they may really need some help, but they're either reluctant to reach out, or we're just not in a good habit of, like, stopping by or emailing them or whatever it might be. So one big tip for me is, like, make yourself available to everyone. I mean, if it's an all staff email, if it's a post to your LMS page, if it is dropping by multiple times during their plan bell and almost like stalking them outside their classroom, you just want to make sure, because it really has been a long year. They've likely tried so many different things and done, you know, created lessons on many different platforms and digital tools. And if you don't go in there and make sure that, like, they're ready to shut down for the year, but then also use a lot of what they've created and be ready for next year, you could have yourself in a bit of a pickle, like when August comes around and the next school year is starting to come back up again. And you have all these teachers who are flustered because they know they created this, or they know they had this file, but they didn't know what they did with it. And so I just think that, like, making sure that you look in every little nook and cranny for all those teachers that you haven't had a chance to maybe reach out to quite as often is huge. So make yourself available. And that probably goes into my second one, which is, like, don't assume. And so we're going to, like, spell out stuff to these teachers, and not in, like, a way where we're babying them, but just like, guys, it's been a long year. Like, don't forget to shut down your Schoology courses properly, and make sure that you're exporting all of your lessons and materials into your resources so that you can use them in your courses for next year. And just all of those little things that we can kind of forget in the moment of what has been a wild year, to make sure that we're supporting our teachers and, like, closing the school year on a strong note, finishing strong. So those would be two big tips for me. And Molly already said it, but definitely meet with your admin, start planning for next year, take good notes. I mean, those are great tips as well. So I think those are two big things on my radar, and I'm looking forward to, you know, using this last month to do those things too.
Well, yeah, Tyler, and I love that you brought up, because I feel like what you described happens any year prior to COVID, like the end of the year, and trying to help teachers clean up courses and their resources and make sure they're, you know, closing things out properly. And in every fall prior to COVID, there's always chaos because they didn't do it right the year, and they're trying to hunt it down and everything. So I think that's a great reminder for coaches everywhere, like for us not to forget about some of those things. And I also want to add that we don't have favorites. Like my grandma always said about all of her children, she didn't have favorites. Different children had different needs from her.
Yeah, that's a nice tactful way to put it. I should have said it that way for sure. But, you know, all of us coaches, we know what we're talking about, right? You just have some people that you end up inevitably visiting more often or working with more often. You know, it just happens no matter how hard we try to fight it.
For sure.
Well, one of the things that we had an episode on previous to this was how do we coach during testing season? And obviously this year, more than any other year, because of what happened, obviously we had the shutdown about a year ago. And then this year's got some schools that are hybrid. Some schools just are now getting into be in person. So the big question was, how do you even assess this year for students when it's been so bonkers? But the same could be said for us as coaches, right? How do we even assess ourselves as a coach this year compared to it being such a different scenario than any previous year. So is there anything that you have done to assess your effectiveness as a coach for this year? And basically overall, just what is your own kind of motto on how you assess and evaluate your own practice?
I think it's good to be honest. I think it's good to just first and foremost self-reflect and self-analyze. So for me, you know, I have a YouTube channel that I put videos on, like going in and looking like how many views did some of these videos get? And honestly, like it was underwhelming in many cases. So maybe that's one area where you're like, oh, I put all this time into this video or that training tutorial or did this professional development session and like 4 people watched it. Oh, and by the way, one of those views is mine, right? So I think that that's important to first and foremost, like self-reflect. I would say second, whoever it is, whoever you reach out to at your building, whether it's your admin and you have a really close relationship with them, or maybe you have like a tech lead in your building who is a teacher full-time, but they also kind of serve as like a liaison or a middleman to you as the tech coach. You know, I would ask for their input. Hey, how did you feel like my emails were received or my posts on Schoology were received? Or do you feel like we kind of like missed some things with some of the trainings we did for teachers? And then I would say lastly is go and talk to teachers and just say like, you know, how comfortable were you this year? Did you feel like you had everything you needed? Is there anything going into next year I can do better? Are there any things that like you would prefer? You know, sometimes it's almost like we might do with parents as teachers when they come in for parent night and we ask them for like their preferred email and their preferred cell phone. The reason why we ask for that stuff is we don't want to send information to an email they never check. And so it's good to like check in with our teachers too. Like, what's your preferred way to like get PD or updates or our tech newsletter that we send out? And so I think those are all important things to do. And then lastly, if you do coaching cycles, you know, take a look at the self-evaluations that teachers are doing of themselves. Do they see the growth in themselves? Are they seeing the changes? Because indirectly, whether you don't feel like you're worthy of the credit or not, like you've been the one pushing them, you've been the one helping them grow. So if you have seen growth in teachers, that's another way, I guess, to kind of judge how you've been doing as the coach behind the scenes too.
And to piggyback off of meeting with the teachers and really asking them for honest feedback, don't just pick the ones who have different needs. However, Katie just put that, right? Go to the people who didn't talk to you much. I have several teachers who I have made valiant efforts, right? We have all made valiant efforts this year to just try and open those doors. And it's just been a hard year, right? So I'm planning on talking to them and trying to figure out, okay, so for next year, what are some things that I can do to support you better without having to come to one-on-one sessions? Or like, what are some things that they're looking for that will feel less invasive because we don't have that relationship, but I still want to reach them, right? So I'm planning on having those honest conversations with the people who are probably still wondering who I am because I've only been there for a year now. So I wanted to piggyback off of that. And then I think going back to how I'm assessing myself, I definitely have been doing that reflection that Tyler mentioned. Like, okay, I have put out a whole lot of screencasts and I really do like the screencast option because they could do it on their time. It's less time consuming. Typically when you're screencasting, you aren't making a 15-minute video to send out to people, right? You're keeping it sweet, to the point, what they need to know. So I do like that. I'm hoping that next year I do get more than 4 views. So I'm not sure if I'll stop doing it entirely, but using that as a form of feedback, like, okay, this was not the platform this year. Try it out a little bit next year and keep that reflection going and that assessment of, are people watching these? So I did like that a lot. And then this is jumping. Sorry, I'm jumping. But I think one of the best compliments I have received as a coach this year is just saying from multiple people, different times, I just love that you're always there. I just love that you're always available. It might not be people who are using me a lot, but they at least are recognizing that I am putting myself out there and I'm willing and ready to jump whenever they need me to. So I think that knowing my personality and the type of coach that I hope to be, I'm doing my job. It's sometimes, like Tyler said, we aren't feeling like we're doing our job right now just because a lot of times it goes, okay, here it is. Did they watch it? Did they read it? Did they engage with it at all? But hearing that validation of, I love that you're always here. That makes me feel better about the whole year. It does.
Yeah, I would say, kind of just go back and forth a little bit on one of the things you said. Like, we have to be open-minded. So like, if we hear maybe we're not having teachers say like, oh, I love always having you there. You're always there when I need you. Like, if we're not hearing that, then we should go back and look at our schedule. For example, yesterday I met with the tech lead at one of the schools that I serve. And I told her about the videos that were getting 4 views. And I was like, why do you think that is? Like, am I not communicating it clearly enough? Or do you feel like it's not being posted at a time that's really receptive for your staff? And she was like, you know what? I think it's just because it's a little too general. You make these videos and then you post them for the whole district, right? So this goes out to your high school folks, your middle school folks, your elementary teachers. And I just don't think there's like a buy-in from them because it doesn't speak to them. It's not specific enough or related to what they're teaching or they're doing. And so in the moment, I was like, you're right. Like, next year, we need to set up some things where it's department specific or it's grade level specific, and make sure that they're receiving kind of the targeted, focused training and integration that they need. And I think that will really help with the buy-in and the engagement. So I think it's being open-minded. And like, when you hear something like that, it kind of caught me off guard. Like, yeah, you're right. These videos were pretty general. So like, maybe I do need to make them a little bit more specific. And then right then in the moment, like, work to change that for next year. Hey, let's look at the schedule. When can I meet with departments? Oh, okay. They meet on Wednesdays. Like, that's perfect, right? Instantly start doing it. And that's a good way to evaluate how effective you are as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that you both are touching on asking the tough questions. I know that was something my very first year as a tech coach, right? Like, you go through your programs and everyone everywhere tells you to get feedback. And so you know that you should do it to improve, but you're really nervous to do it because you're like, oh, what if I actually suck at this and they hate me? And how will I show my face here again if they rate me really low? So posting that first link to the first feedback form is always super intimidating and super nervous, or asking those questions in person. I commend you guys. That's even more intimidating to like create that community where they can be honest with you. But it is just, I just can't stress enough, like, for coaches to just do that. Ask the questions, maybe not this year because people are sick of filling out forms, but like moving forward, like, post the feedback forms and look at them regularly and look at them with an open mind. Maybe go back in a day or two so you don't get offended when you read some comments, but just know that like there is something to them, right? Like, even if you're like, what are they talking about? I literally did that. Well, maybe you did, but maybe they didn't perceive it that way. Or, Tyler, to your point, like, you did post a video on that. Well, maybe it wasn't specific enough, right? So like, there's always some nugget that we can pull out of feedback that we get, even if we're a little put off by it at first. So anyway, I just commend you guys for asking the tough questions because it is hard. It can be a little ego hitter for sure, but it's good that you're doing it. So thinking forward though, so taking all of that feedback, kind of knowing where your teachers have been this year, and looking forward to next year, right? So COVID may have actually helped in this regard in a lot of ways, but every year I always think it's important for us to think about like, how are we going to take this deeper, right? Like, how are we going to take, so I introduced these tools at a certain level, or these strategies at a certain level, or, you know, I just got in with coaching cycles and we kind of just started scratching the surface on some of these topics and strategies, and kind of looking at the whole building and sort of where you're at. How are you going to take that deeper, right? So great, now we've got everyone on Zoom and Google Meet, but have we really fundamentally changed their instruction in any way? So how do you plan to look forward next year to start to take teachers to that next level? And I might have a couple follow-up questions for you, depending on where that goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the big thing is to take whatever feedback you've gotten, and that includes like self-reflection, and then look at what the projected schedule is going to be like next year, you know, where you're going to be in the district, what days, how many days, and you can kind of just take your schedule down to the studs and rebuild it. I think that's step one, is like not being afraid to change things up, because that's going to make your effectiveness better. And I think that you're going to be able to kind of take all that you've learned through all this feedback and say, well, maybe I was spending a little bit too much time like devoting hours of the day to creating these lunch and learn videos, and they didn't get quite as much engagement. So maybe I want to reallocate that time. So that would be one way. I would say the other thing too is to meet with your admin, you know, the principals of the school. And if you're noticing, hey, we did really great with this, this, and this, but we still haven't gotten a ton of buy-in for like formal coaching cycles, which of course is one of the best ways to get that deeper, more targeted impact with our teachers and students, then you have to advocate for that. And sometimes that might be like proving its worth. It may be showcasing how it's worked at other schools and almost using like the peer pressure model. Well, they do it here and here, and they've had all of these success stories. You know, that's another way to kind of get buy-in from admin. And then I would say too, just like take it off their plate. You know, once they say, okay, then you put everything in place. Come up with the marketing and the sign up, come up with the schedule, come up with how it's going to work with all of their PD days and all of their unique things on their school calendar. Like, have all of those things figured out so that when you bring it back to them, they're just like, oh yeah, this is great. Like, go for it. And so I think those are big things too. Like, don't be afraid to just change up your schedule. Don't be afraid to say, yeah, this didn't work, or yes, this did work, and either build on it or tear it down and restart. And then you definitely have to work with your admin to get some of those programs in place that do support deeper integration, whether that is like a systematic Google level 1 thing, that's coaching cycles, you name it. Like, you have to get buy-in from admin, because that will set you up for success.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go a different route, but it's same background, I guess. So this year I was trying really hard to figure out ways to show teachers what was going on in the classrooms without, I mean, typically I think the departments in years past have kind of sent each other to shadow their other teachers and shadow colleagues and get that experience of, okay, what's working well in your class? Okay, oh, I really want to try that in mine. Well, that didn't happen this year, right? And so I tried really hard, our whole team did, but to do these bright spot challenges. So once in the fall semester, and I just recently did it in spring, I basically asked teachers, hey, do you have an example of a student project or some kind of cool lab activity or experiment or whatever it was? Do you have something that you integrated tech really well? Can you share that with me so that I can show other people what cool things are going on in our buildings, right? And so what I found is 9 times out of 10, teachers were actually shouting out other teachers, which was really cool, because not only were the people being shouted out surprised, but I think it built this confidence that the teachers didn't realize they needed, was like, oh my gosh, I am doing cool stuff, because we're not used to tooting our own horns, right? And so to have other teachers say, no, what she did in her classroom or what he's doing with his students is so cool, and here's an example, or here's what they're doing, to share that out with other people. One, you learn best from your colleagues. And two, it gives that real life example. And it's not just, oh, here's a template Molly gave me that I can use, right? It's, oh my gosh, this is how the students are using it and benefiting and learning from this. That's cool. So that's one thing that I hope to continue next year is taking things to the next level and showing that integration that's already going on, so that the teachers who might be late adopters or the teachers who aren't as confident using different resources and tools can see, oh, well, I talk to that person all the time. I didn't know that they were into tech. So if they can do it, maybe I can do it. And kind of use that as a platform for that buy-in that Tyler was talking about. I also think that the coaching cycles and lunch and learns and all of those things are really important. But to create that build-in, I'm hoping that the relationships I've made with my current coaching cycle participants will help me get those next people and then the next people, because we've all been in schools, right? We know that word of mouth is really important. Building that reputation is really important. So I'm really hoping to lean on and not put more work on. That's not what I'm trying to say, but to bring things to the next level, I'm hoping that I can lean on those participants in this coaching cycle that's getting ready to wrap up and say, you know what, can I use you as an example? This was such a great project that you did, or your students seem to really like this. And once a couple teachers start talking, it usually has a pretty strong impact. So that's kind of some of the things that I hope to do to get it to the next level and to continue that integration.
Yeah, that's good. And Molly, I know like some of our coaches will, kind of building on what you're saying, trying to lean on the people who are in that current space, like doing the coaching cycles or lunch and learns, whatever. Right. So when that wraps up, part of the wrap up in the reflection process with your teachers that you're working with is like, hey, would you please reach out to another colleague and recommend, who you think might benefit from this, and recommend. And that almost always works for whoever they recommend or reach out to. Like they say, okay, and then they sign up. So that's like an easy kind of structure that you can put in place to ensure that those things continue. And Tyler, I really liked a lot of the things that you touched on about some of the structures you put in place, like mentioning, like, have a plan, have the schedule ready to go. So you literally just present it to the admin and they say, yes, this is great, right? Like if you're just coming to them with this great idea, and it seems like they're going to need to be the one to work out the schedule and everything, like really you're adding more work to these admin who don't have enough time in the day anyway. So if you can just present to them, and all you need is either feedback to make some changes or a blessing to put it in place, right? And then they just need to support you and encourage participation as a part of that. That is a really great system and structure to put in place. And so I like that you mentioned that, Tyler, because I think it's really important that we as coaches remember that we have to create these systems and structures to actually make these things happen. While I know that everything isn't in our control, like we may not necessarily be the ones who can say yes or no to do that, we can do little things like present something so they just need to say yes, like ask a teacher to recommend another teacher to keep it going, right? So I just think it's important for us to think about those things. I had a professor who said this, and it has just rung through my mind ever since, is that every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. And that's so true. And so if we don't design a system to get the results we want to get, then we really don't have anyone to blame but ourselves. So we have to put those systems and structures in place.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, I think that it's so easy when you do bring it to an admin and you have all those things figured out. It's very rare that they're going to say no. So if you really want to set yourself up for success, just put those systems in place, take the work off their shoulders. And then it kind of even in some ways like galvanizes what you do. They're like, oh, because, sometimes our admins, they're the last people to kind of get it sometimes. And then when you bring these systems to them and these structures and these programs, and they see it in place and they're like, oh, this is what you plan on doing with my staff? Like, this is awesome. That is another huge benefit of putting in the work ahead of time, because then the admin buy-in's there and the rest is just going to fall into place.
I like that. Let's shift things up a little bit, though. Let's go to a galaxy far, far away from our education, away from our coaching. But what are just some of the things that you both do to recharge? And what do you have plans for recharging this summer?
Well, I think everybody knows that I am a closeted nerd at Forward Edge. So, really all sorts of things. I just like to keep my mind busy, and my wife indulges me. So, I recently just built a computer. I got the itch to build a computer. So I did that. I've been into trading cards recently. I have 8 million hobbies. There's no shortage of hobbies that I have, right? I love sports. So there's going to be plenty of hobbies that I continue to scratch the itch with over the summer. There is no doubt about that. One of my hobbies.
To pause and give a shout out to Megan for all that she.
Yeah, she really does deserve a shout out.
Yeah. Shout out to Tyler's wife.
Yeah, she's pretty awesome.
I did see that computer too. It looked very nicely done on Twitter.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, that's just one of many things that I like to just get involved with and then move on to the next thing after that. It's just like a tornado. You never know where it's headed next. So that's definitely one thing, right? I like to keep my mind active and try new things and learn new things. But, I definitely want to try and see family more. That's one thing this past year that I have not been able to do very often. And so that's one way I really want to recharge my batteries, is to spend time with family, quality time. Thankfully, one of the things I love to do and one of the places I love to go is Florida. And that's just happens to be where my parents live. So I'd like to go down to Florida and do some fishing and enjoy some sunshine. And I think one of the things that I have neglected to do that I used to really love was, before I would go to bed, I would have a book, like a hardbound actual book, and I would read it. And I was in a pretty good pattern there where I was reading about a book a month. And I want to get back to that. Just continuing to kind of up my own game. It doesn't have to be ed tech related or curriculum and instruction related. Sometimes it is, which is awesome, but just something to, continue to build my own level of knowledge that I have about the world, or even just get into a good fiction story or whatever it might be. But getting back to reading, because I feel like that's kind of like a lost art these days, especially with an actual bound book. So that's one thing I want to do too, to just slow down a little bit, take some time to read, and enjoy the outdoors is another big one too. So I have lots of things on my mind. Katie, I know we only get however many vacation days, but as you can tell, I've got a lot of things planned. So that may have to be adjusted slightly. But yeah, that's what I've got going on as a way to recharge my batteries this summer.
So if anyone's looking for a hobby, reach out to Tyler and he'll be able to help you find one.
Really, whatever you want. I mean, if just let me know what you're into. I'm sure we can help you out. No problem.
When you said trading cards and then you went into the 8 million hobbies, I thought you were going to say you had $8 million from your trading cards. That's where I thought you were going with that. And I was like,
I wish.
Wow.
Yeah, I wish. Not quite, but that'd be a nice dream for sure.
What about you, Molly?
Yeah, so I am mom to 3 little boys. I have a 4-year-old, an almost 3-year-old, and a 1.5-year-old. So we got a lot of energy, if that's what you want to say, around my house. So we are going to the beach on a family vacation, and I cannot wait. My kids ask me every day if we're driving to the beach, and every day I have to say no, and it's also not Friday. They ask every day, is it Friday or are we going to the beach? I wish and I wish. So I can't wait to do that. You cannot tell by my complexion, but I love being outside with my kids. I wear a lot of sunscreen. I am looking forward to getting them as tired as possible outside. Lots of chalk, lots of bubbles, lots of bikes and scooters and all sorts of things. But just soaking it up. I don't know, pre-COVID, I really didn't have that desire to just get outside and sit outside for no reason. And I don't know what, if life is just simpler now and I can enjoy the simple things, but I'm like, man, I cannot wait to go sit on my driveway and watch my kids run around in the street. I'm looking forward to it. The weather has changed and I am ready. I'm ready for
Yes,
it.
cheers to the simple things.
Yeah, right? If anything good came from a chaotic year, it's that you can enjoy literally just eating outside on the deck. Like, that's just something to look forward to. It's great. It's good.
Absolutely. One final follow-up question. This is, May the 4th, right? May the 4th be with you. You got a favorite Star Wars character? Anyone want to jump out with their favorite Star Wars character? I think Molly said something about Jar Jar Binks.
Definitely not Jar Jar Binks. Is he a fish? Is he a rabbit? Like, I'm sorry.
He's
it
a
was
Gungan
bad
or something, right? A Gungan?
Whatever he is a bad concept in my opinion.
Oh, you're gonna get us some hate mail from some real Star Wars fans here.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to choose one, it would have to be a classic. I mean, who doesn't love Han Solo, right?
Okay.
So he's probably my favorite Star Wars character.
Total babe too.
No comment.
I think he maybe needs to edit that out.
Now our hate mail has turned back into love mail. It's
Right.
fine.
That's right. Yeah, we went back to Han Solo. It's all good now. So
Maybe we can get Harrison Ford on the Restart Recharge podcast. What about you, Katie? Do you have a favorite Star Wars character?
Well, mine would probably be Princess Leia because she's just a total female badass. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Mine would have to be probably, a fan favorite in Yoda, but I also do like General Grievous. And I think Tyler is probably the only person who knows who that is.
yeah, I mean, he kind of had a short-lived career though, even though he
Short-lived.
had like 4 arms and 4 legs and all that good stuff. But
Yeah.
that's kind of that's a niche character to like there, Justin. I dig it, man.
Well, thank you. Got to think outside the box sometimes too, but Yoda is also awesome as well. Well, also coming up this summer, if you're looking for things to do, maybe a hobby or two, why don't you come on down to our coaches camp, right? Another great way to recharge this summer, make some awesome connections through the Forward Edge Coaching Camp, which is June 16th and 17th. It's also hybrid, so you can attend in person here in Cincinnati, or you can also attend virtually. So seats are limited though. So we're about halfway full. We want to make sure that you get registered to join us. So make sure that you are going to jump in, get registered so that we can see you for this great event on tips on coaching and making amazing connections, all that you can then have for the next school year. So make sure you reserve your seat at forward-edge.net/Coach Camp. That's once again forward, FORWARD-EDGE.net/Coach Camp. And we'll see you and be excited to see you on June 16th and 17th for Coaches Camp. I think Katie does a way better job of presenting that than I do because I blanked on what that was. I always say / and I don't think that's right. So I wanted to make sure I say / and I blanked. But hey, we want you here for Coaches Camp. That's all that really matters, right? Go to forward-edge.net and, type in Coach Camp at the end. You'll be fine. So make sure you do that. Also, make sure you tune in on May 18th for our next episode. And May the 4th be with you for the rest of the school year.
Thanks, Justin. I think you do a great job. One thing I've learned this year is podcasting is hard. So be sure to subscribe to Restart Recharge wherever you listen to podcasts at restartrechargepodcast.com and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at RRCoachCast.
Hey, we've said it on each of them. We want you to reach out to us and let us know what you want to talk about. What are the topics that are on your mind that we can discuss to help you restart and recharge?
So press the restart button.
Recharge your coaching batteries and leave feeling equipped and inspired to coach fearlessly with the Restart Recharge podcast.
A Tech Coach Collective.
Katie, do you have anything you got planned for the summer?
Puppy class training.
Oh.
Looking
Okay.
forward to that.
Right. Well, there you have it.